All right, welcome to yet another episode of 9 p.m. Conversation. Sorry about the delayed start. The computer just conked off at the wrong time. This is me, Prashant. I have Lokesh with me here. Hi, Lokesh. How are you?
Hi Prashant, how are you?
All right. So, today we will continue our discussion. We've been talking about epics, and today the topic
Of technology and innovation in the epic of Ramayana. Something that we, or it's an angle from which we hardly ever see Ramayana. Lokesh, over to you. So this has been one of the key interesting angles that you look at Ramayana from.
So a couple of questions that Ramayana always intrigues. So like we have been talking about the Mahabharata and we've been putting it as a succession battle and the rules of monarchy as the core construct behind it. When you start looking at the Ramayana, the couple of questions that always intrigued me, and if you put it
Hmm.
there, so if in the context of Mahabharata, it was the question that why is the 18-day war called a Dharma Yudh?
Called Dharmyudh.
The question that has always, so in a nutshell, the question that has always intrigued me is why was there Ram Rajya after Lord Ram gets instated as the king of Ayodhya, of Kaushal?
I didn't
So when
understand the question. I didn't
so
understand the
when
question.
when when Ram comes back from exile after defeating
Uh
Ravan
huh.
and
Uh
becomes
huh.
the king, we know that period is now referred to as Ram Rajya, which was extremely prosperous. People prospered. There was happiness. A
Hmm.
post, although not a lot of description is not given, but that's a context which is very very strong in our minds.
Hmm.
So like the finale of the Mahabharata is the Dharma Yudh. In some sense,
Hmm.
at least growing up, the takeaway I had was that the takeaway from the from the Ramayana is that Ram ushered in a Ram Rajya.
Hmm.
And when we talk about Ram Rajya, the Ramayana is not very vocal about his, again, his deeds with the common public, his social activities, his healthcare or educational spends, and
Hmm.
so we're not talking about that. The Ramayana, like the
Hmm.
Mahabharata, is fairly silent on these topics.
Hmm.
Then why did we have a Ram Rajya? Is
Hmm.
there something behind it? That's a kind of a mystery that always intrigued me.
Hmm.
So that's the context with which the Ramayana always was like a mystery to me. So
So the
at the surface there is this battle between good and evil. Ram goes to
uh-huh.
Lanka. Ravan commits a sin. He abducts Sita. Ram and Lakshman, two just people in the forest with a ragtag army of Sugriv and his colleagues, go to Lanka and against all odds win that battle and come back. In a nutshell, that's the story of Ramayana. But what has this
Hmm.
to do with Ram Rajya?
Hmm.
In popular parlance, so when I ask my, say, my relatives, my parents about it, it used to mean that the Lord has become the king.
Uh-huh.
But
Okay.
but if I draw an analogy from, say, the Mahabharata, we don't
Hmm.
call Krishna's reign as, say, Krishna Rajya or prosperity of that nature. So there's something
Hmm.
seems to be different here.
Hmm.
Something seems to be really different here. So that
Hmm.
that is it was in some sense the starting question of it.
Okay.
The second question, which probably intrigued me, was that if we put it again in the context of itihas,
Hmm.
and then as children, the Pushpak Viman and Hanuman's epic flights or epic adventures, if I can call it,
Hmm.
have always been like tales that have inspired and tales that have been aroused a lot of curiosity.
Very,
Now, if
very
you put it in
fascinating stories.
very, very fascinating, but seemingly hard to conceive in the context of itihas.
Okay.
So
Itihas
the
means
rest
something that really happened.
is something related to history, or really it means itihas. So we are narrating as it happened, as it actually
Uh-huh.
occurred.
Hmm.
So is there some construct there?
Hmm.
because the rest of the story seems fairly okay.
Mm-hmm.
There are these three kingdoms. There is Kausal or Ayodhya, there is Kishkinda, and there is Lanka. Three kingdoms fairly distant from each other in the Indian subcontinent. And we are being told a tale of these three kingdoms and what happened. That
Mm-hmm.
part seems fairly fine. But these were like the two questions. The second is more like it intrigued me. Why is there this mystical element or this magical element to it?
Mm-hmm.
Is it something else that is being trying to convey here, or is the author or is the poet taking some liberties and describing something and we are interpreting it in a different way? And the second
Mm-hmm.
overarching question was Ram Rajya.
Okay.
So those have been at least the points of interest when I've tried to understand the Ramayana. I think you was
Mm-hmm.
trying to say something when I interrupted you a couple of minutes back.
No, I was saying essentially that the questions that you start talking about Ramayana is a what really is Ram Rajya, given that we don't talk about welfare as we talk about welfare state or yeah, essentially a government which is sort of spending on public health, on public education, on infrastructure, all of those things. And then the second question that you are bringing up is that what is the significance of the magical elements in the story, because the rest of the story is pretty ground to earth and pretty easy to believe that
Seemingly,
something like
yes.
this really happened. And
Mhm.
whereas there are a couple of things like the Pushpak Viman story or Hanuman flying across the sea,
Yeah.
those things probably need some kind of explanation or an interpretation.
So that's one
That's
construct.
the starting point. Uh-huh.
That's those were in some sense the starting points. The
Okay.
third, probably very interesting aspect was if we look at, and like we were looking at the kind of battles or wars that happened in the Mahabharata, and we drew a distinction between the earlier battles and the final great war.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
If we look at the Ramayana, and if we just try and enumerate the skirmishes or the battles that happened, and if I'm not mistaken, the first actual is when Vishwamitra takes Ram and Lakshman
Ram
for
and
their safety,
Lakshman,
and in a single arrow, Ram kills Tadka.
Tadka is killed.
The
Uh-huh.
next time, it's Subahu who's killed, and Marich
Mm-hmm.
flees. Marich is the same guy who comes back as the deer and is killed when Sita is abducted.
Marich doesn't get killed then.
It doesn't get killed; he just flees.
He leaves. Uh-huh.
He flees. That's the second. The third incident, which is really talked about, is the killing of Bali when Bali is slain.
Uh-huh. Khardushan.
Sorry, the third is Khardushan, my mistake. So when Shupnakha there, and even in the Khardushan battle. So although
Uh-huh.
Valmiki describes it as a major battle, it is Ram who's alone fighting that battle, and he completely destroys this so-called army of Kharandushan, who are
Okay.
supposedly top-notch generals of Ravan.
Mm-hmm.
Single-handedly, he just completely demolishes them. The fourth encounter is when Bali is killed. Again, a single arrow, and Sugriv becomes the king of Kishkinda. And then we move to the final battle. So
Mm-hmm.
if we just look at the list of these battles, skirmishes, events, whatever we want to call it,
Mm-hmm.
what
Mm-hmm.
it seems to appear, and even in the final
Mm-hmm.
battle, like we talked about yesterday, there are hardly any casualties or no named casualties on the side of Ram's army.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas the other side just gets completely like
Completely demolished. Uh-huh.
completely destroyed. So it is
Mm-hmm.
really a completely uneven war. It's not a battle between equals. One thing that you
Mm-hmm.
can look from this reading, and you can look from the earlier which is the Tadka, the Subahu, the Khardushan, and even the battle in Lanka. The battle in Lanka has a couple of tense moments when Ram and Lakshman become unconscious because of the Nag Pash and a couple of incidents, but typically there is no casualty. So it also gives us a construct which tells us that even if the sadhus were being troubled by the Rakshasas, which is the reason Vishwamitra took Ram and Lakshman to his hermitage, they were not equal fights. Those fights were, so we might look at from one perspective, which might be a modern day perspective, that Ram is Lord Ram and obviously nobody can match him in metal. But if we for a minute don't look at from that side and just look at it from a war perspective or a battle perspective, it seems like an encounter which was doomed from the start. It had to go in one direction. So this is another aspect of it. So this is what the great battles tell us. Ravan has not been shown to be a great warrior or winning any battles in Valmiki's Ramayana, nothing of that sort.
Nothing of that sort.
So that's
we have some Velar stories of Meghnad though.
Not in Valmiki's Ramayana to that extent.
Okay.
So as we probably move to Ramcharitmanas, which is Tulsidas Ramcharitmanas, we probably get a different kind of a slightly different version of that story, or that story narrated from a slightly different lens or a perspective. So I would not say a version. Maybe it is Tulsidas's reading of the Ramayana as we are discussing our interpretation of the Ramayana. So we could probably view it in that context. And with a lot of bhakti, bhav, and all those things suffused into it. So this is the lay of the land that we're looking at. Let's look at the other aspect of it, that the battle in Ramayana is a battle which is clearly established as a battle between good and evil.
Yes.
It has, if you look at the end of the battle, it has all the characteristics of a battle between good and evil. A hero, Ram, has an artist's journey. It falls into the classical model of the hero's journey. Goes through a test, goes through all of that, finally reaches there and wins back. It also has the good versus evil, wherein good completely demolishes the evil. So on the side of evil, there is nobody left. The only guy who was supposed to be good on that side switches sides before the battle, which is Vibhishan. So the construct of good versus evil seems to be a reasonable construct that the battle follows. Ram obviously is good. Ram is Lord Ram. Ram is good. The question it throws up is, why is Ravan evil? Two aspects that have always been highlighted. First, the construct wherein we know Vishwamitra talks about, and then probably the other sages also in the Dandakvan talk about, which is that the Rakshasas have been troubling them. Is that big a construct to probably call him as evil? I don't know, but this is one aspect which is always talked about. The other aspect is that Ravan abducted Sita. So these are the two reasons given for the evil. Now, are these good things? Obviously not. Abduction of Sita is obviously a very, very bad. But is this the construct in which a religious epic would construct good versus evil? I don't know. It does not seem to be that strong a construct. There is something probably also underlying it, which we are probably not being able to see, is also a aspect that I think we should explore.
Okay.
Then let's look at another side of the story, and this was probably one of the interesting angles to look at it, that all the hermitages with the Rakshasas were on the banks of the rivers. And if we look at what happened in the Tadka incident or what happened in the Subahu and Marich incident, it is that they suddenly appeared wanting to ransack the hermitage. That was the imagery given. So is there a construct there that is being hinted at?
Okay.
Okay.
Okay, you're saying the hermitages are situated, the ashrams are situated by the riverside.
By the riverside.
That's a consistent theme, and the other
That's a
thing is
consistent theme all through the Ramayana.
all
And the
through the
places where the
Ramayana.
Rakshasas attack or trouble the rishis, the sages, are all on the river banks. And here we are talking about
On
major
the river
rivers.
banks, and
They
we are
suddenly
also
appear.
talking about they suddenly appear and then disappear.
Now let's look. So given all this construct, let's put a hypothesis in place. We also know that Lanka is possibly connoting with Sri Lanka today, which is an island country. And when Ram and his Sena had to go to Lanka, they did not have ships or anything. It was very hard for them to cross. They had to build a bridge, which is why we also have the incident of Hanuman earlier, who flew across the ocean into Lanka. However, it so appears that all the Rakshasas are able to easily come on this side of the Midland. Whether it was Tadka, whether it was Marich and Subahu, whether it was Shurpanakha when she was loitering about the jungles and when she had that incident with Ram and Lakshman. They even had a standing army, if I can call that an army or a platoon or a brigade station there with Karan Dushan. So Lanka, in some sense, had that much reach. The common classical explanation seems to be the Rakshasas have magical powers. So they can just teleport themselves or in some sense from one place to the other. However, in the case of Ravan, it is explicitly told that when Ravan comes to abduct Sita, he does not use teleporting. He uses something called this Pushpak Viman.
Pushpak Viman.
He goes on it, and the Pushpak Viman is seemingly a physical piece because of two reasons. One, Sita is also abducted and taken aboard the Pushpak Viman and transported on the Pushpak Viman to Lanka. And Jatayu is able to see the Pushpak Viman and attacks it and fights it. Also, at the end of the war, Ram and his entourage are able to come back to Ayodhya very fast using the Pushpak Viman. Now, these are our data points, and possibly here in the eras that we're talking about, maybe 1000 BC, maybe 1500 BC, maybe 700, 800 BC, we're talking about that kind of time frames. Another data point we have is that when they are crossing the sea, they don't have ships, so we know that. Even with when Ram is going for his exile and all that, we have description of very rudimentary boats to cross the Ganges and the rivers. So what we have is, in some sense, in mainland India at that point, is some technology which helps us cross the river, but not go across the river, go along with the river. So you have small ships, small boats, or kind of barges or canoes that you can cross the river with, but it's not something that is worthy for long distance travel on water.
How do we arrive at that conclusion?
So they always mention only crossing the river.
Okay.
Very crossing, and 3-4 people can get seated. Those are a couple of descriptions given.
Okay, we don't talk about ships or boats being
or even river travel. We don't talk about those things.
So river travel we don't talk about. The travel,
but we only talk about crossing the river. So we talk about crossing the river. There.
Yes. No, I'm saying the travel happens on the ground. We use boats to cross the waterways whenever they come. but we don't use waterways for travel.
Transport. This is clear.
Mm-hmm.
A final point, and this goes again with the Ram Rajya, is that we know Lanka has always been called as the Golden Lanka or Sone ki Lanka.
Mm-hmm.
In Valmiki's Ramayana, Valmiki is effusive in his praise of the wealth and beauty of Lanka.
Okay.
Something he does not do of Kishkinda, something that
Mm-hmm.
he does not do of Ayodhya.
Mm-hmm.
So when Hanuman first reaches Lanka
Mm-hmm.
looking for Sita, he's taken in by the beauty of it, and Valmiki is spends pages and pages describing the beauty and the wealth and splendor of Lanka. So definitely an aspect there, and which is in today's common parlance also, that Lanka was Sone ki Lanka. Lanka was a very rich place. There are angles given that Kuber was his cousin brother or step brother, and those reasons. But there is definitely this context also given that Lanka is very, very rich or very, very prosperous.
Mm-hmm.
It's an island, and it is extremely rich. So there is this angle also which probably needs to be explored, that why is Lanka so rich?
Mm-hmm.
So let's now, probably given all these
Okay.
data points, maybe come up with a hypothesis that ties all of them, and let's see if that makes sense.
Okay.
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 And look at then the construct of the Ramayana.
Uh-huh.
In the Ramayana also we see one thing. So if we contrast the Kaushal or Ayodhya, the folks from Ayodhya, with the folks from Kishkinda, to every reader it is obvious that Kishkinda is backward. And we are talking technologically backward. They are far more primitive in their choices of weapons. They are far more primitive, which is probably also the reason they're called Vanars and all that, maybe. But there is this clear depiction. They stay in caves. They don't have, even Kishkinda is a large cave cut out of it. They don't have those modern buildings. They don't have that. So this distinction is probably
They don't
being
use
established.
chariots.
They don't use
They
chariots.
don't
They don't
use
use even.
chariots.
They don't even use bows and arrows. So all of them fight with stones or maces
Yeah.
and fist fights
None. I
and
mean, leave
duels.
alone the Divyastras.
So there is no talk of Divyastras and all that. So there is this clear context probably that is being created, that between Ayodhya and Kishkinda, Kishkinda is technologically backward. So we've been given a context. In today's reading, when we look at it, because everything is so much in the past, it is hard for us to probably pick up these differences, because we are so much technology. It is like we are now if we were on the 50th floor of technology, it will be hard for us to distinguish between the first, third, and fifth floor, which floors are there. They would all be that far in time from us. But suppose we were on the third floor, then we could clearly see that somebody was on the first floor and somebody was on the fifth floor. So in today's context, when we read it, and because we assume the way of our life and everything, all of these seem very similar to us. But at least my guess is, when we do a closer reading of it with this context in mind, there is a clear technology difference, or there is a clear difference being articulated. And let's keep that in mind. So what was the reason behind it, or why did the author or why did the poet try and make this distinction? Let's for a minute now make another assumption, and let's see if that fits in. That Lanka for some reason has innovated on some technology and is probably pulling ahead because of that. And let's say that explains its richness. So if you innovate on something, we know you can create wealth, you can create riches because of it. And let's make this simplifying assumption that suppose they had innovated on something that the Rus did not have, and it was so valuable that it led to wealth transfer into Lanka, which is the reason for their wealth, their richness. Now, what could this possibly be? If we
Okay.
just look at the evidences we have talked about, Lanka is an island. They are seemingly very easy, or they are mobile. They can come to mainland India. They can come to different points. They can station people. They have a physical piece known as the Pushpak Viman. So although the word Viman there in modern parlance today means aeroplane, it means they have something with which they are moving around. For a minute, if we make this simplifying assumption that, let's say, they had the ability to use waterways as a transport mechanism, what would that lead to? I think we've lost Prashant. Let's just wait for a minute.
Okay, I'm back.
Yeah, you need to do something about your network. Yeah.
I need to do something about my internet connection.
Yeah. So
All
so we
right.
were where we were making this assumption that something has led to the richness, and there seems to be some technology innovation. And we know Lanka is an island. We know they are seemingly more mobile than the people from Kaushal or the residents of Kishkinda, which is being shown by Tadka reaching as far as Vishwamitra's ashram and Marich and Subahu reaching there. We know Khardush and Shupnaka. Shupnaka is Ravan's sister. So even a sister traveling that far. We have not shown the mobility of any other woman that far. So traveling so far. So we have shown all these things. So if we make an assumption here that maybe what Ravan or what Lanka had solved or cracked was that they had developed a mechanism to use waterways for transport. Or in simple terms, they had some form of shipping technology. That was that a game changer? Vibhishan, so look at also Vibhishan is able to easily cross over onto this side, come and meet Ram before he makes the foray into Lanka and all of so multiple movements we are shown. So rather than saying that these were all because they had magical powers, it was as simple as they were probably far more advanced on shipping. The people in mainland India could use primitive boats, they could cross rivers, but they could not use waterways for transport. So let's look at the first question that it raises, which is the attack on the ashrams or the hermitages. Now imagine you are a small ship, or let's for lack of any other word, let's use a simple small ship, and you're moving across the river, and one, that would clearly mean that you will suddenly appear and disappear, because that's the nature of it. Second, it's not easy for anybody to go and kind of follow you, because you can
nobody can intercept you.
Nobody can intercept you. It effectively means you've just appeared and disappeared. You can come and raid the hermitages. Probably hermitages were also being raided because they were close on the river banks. They were completely unguarded, had some food, had some resources. So maybe an easy pickings, maybe just they were doing it just because they were compulsive people who probably troubled people. But maybe they were just some easy resource pickings.
Mm-hmm.
and which is why they're really not fighters, they are really not battle veterans, which is why Ram is able to easily defeat all of them, whether it's Tadka, whether it's Marij, whether it's Subahu.
Mm-hmm.
And this is also the reason that Marij is able to kind of flee. He gets back onto probably the ship and he just flees.
Mm-hmm.
This is the reason that, and they have these trading routes put out, and it is probably because of these trading routes that there is a small attachment of the army led by Kharan Dushan, which is probably stationed near Panchvati, which is what
Mm-hmm.
Ram encounters, or which Shupnakha sends to attack Ram. So it's a small detachment of the army.
Mm-hmm.
Now, this kind of a technology difference can possibly explain the difference of wealth. And once we know how trade moves, how
Mm-hmm.
technology moves, it would probably be draining the wealth from India and accumulating it in Lanka.
Mm-hmm.
We'll come to the angles of Hanuman and the crossing the river and that later. But let's just continue with the simple hypothesis. So if this wealth is being drained
Uh-huh.
and getting accumulated in
Mm-hmm.
Lanka, it throws up a couple of aspects. One, the people in the country in mainland India would probably be getting worse off with time as wealth is getting drained
Okay.
off. And Lanka, in some sense,
Mm-hmm.
because it has a monopoly on this technology, is
Mm-hmm.
garnering all this wealth, and it's not easy. So you need to also understand, if you look at Kaushal and all these are like extremely inland kind of states in
Uh-huh.
the mainland mass. So for them, their wars are chariots, they are great horsemen, they are great fighters. So that's their core technology. Shipping is not a core requirement for them. It's rivers,
For
the
them,
only use when for rivers is how do I cross them, and which is why they
how
probably
do I
have
grow?
ways to do that. But they're really not interested in this. Lanka, when it looks at it, its view of the world is very different. They are a
Mm-hmm.
small island, not endowed with probably great many resources. So they need to look out, they need to do it, and hence shipping becomes very, very imperative for them. And for some reason they've solved that. So with this, the wealth starts to
Mm-hmm.
move out, and probably as when Ram defeats Ravan and kills Ravan, what can probably be inferred is
Mm-hmm.
that this technology, which was a monopoly of Lanka, in some sense
Uh-huh. Okay.
is transferred to mainland India.
So are you saying that the central import of Ramrajya is probably that a technology, a very useful technology, or a technology with a lot of leverage in terms of military and economic possibilities? That technology was suddenly made available to mainland India. Is that what you're saying?
So more than saying that it was suddenly made available, it was like the monopoly of somebody. So imagine today, what do we do? In a country, if
Mm-hmm.
some company or somebody garners a monopoly, it starts moving
Mm-hmm.
against consumer interest. That's how we look at monopolies. Think of it from the same
Mm-hmm.
context. And then the government needs to intervene, try and, in some sense, solve the monopoly problem. And that leads to consumer surplus and overall happiness.
Mm-hmm.
That's the construct that
Mm-hmm.
101 of economics tells us. This is exactly the same construct we
Uh-huh.
talked about.
Mm-hmm.
And it took the intervention of Lord Ram to figure
Mm-hmm.
this out, make this happen, and which is why probably he's considered a god. He was
Uh-huh.
able to, with this, solve this problem. And in some sense, this problem got solved not because somebody knowingly solved it, but it just got solved in it. He did not go looking for this technology or something, but as a net import of all the activities done, as a net result of it, this problem got solved, which in some sense reversed the flow of wealth and brought prosperity back to Ayodhya and Kaushal and Milan.
Mm-hmm. Now,
So,
Lokesh,
which
this thing looks from one angle it looks very counterintuitive or contra to the current context where we place a lot of premium on innovation and we sort of take it for granted that the guy who innovates has the right to garner the most amount of or the largest share of the surplus. We have even with medicines, we have patents, we have a lot of intellectual property protection. So to me, at least, trained in the modern day the context, it seems very understandable that if Lankans discovered shipping technology, then they had all the right to garner all the economic benefits that they could have. So,
let's look back at what you said. Even in the modern day context, the inventor or the people who created that innovation, whether it's in pharmacy or medicine or in some other area, have an advantage. They are given an advantage, but there are enough rules and regulations around it that the innovation is not just exclusive from a usage perspective. So, like in mobile, we have this concept known as FRAND, which is that at reasonable prices, which have to be negotiated, your technology needs to be shared. Otherwise, somebody who invented some 4G would probably have a monopoly over 4G. So you benefit from the technology. Yes, you put in effort, you put in risk, you put in capital, you put in labor. So should benefits out of it accrue to you? Yes. But should that technology just be your baby and cannot be shared with everybody? The answer is no. So that distinction needs to be drawn. And in a sense, all modern frameworks try and draw this distinction. So there should be advantages. And there should be advantages enough that it motivates people to invest more and put in more effort for innovation. But it should not be that only that person can use it.
And are we also saying that the evil of Ravan is probably that he tried to keep this new innovative technology away from everybody else? Is that the
That
evil
seems
that
to
we are
be that.
talking about?
So he
Okay.
tried to, or it so happened. I don't know. So I would maybe even say that it so happened that because of that he became evil. So did he do it consciously or it happened? I don't know. There is nothing I could at least infer from the Ramayana on that context. So I'll probably give the benefit of doubt and say that it happened that way.
Okay.
And he did not proactively try and spread it across and open it up. And with time, this thing started becoming evil. It became a monopoly. It started sucking up wealth. It started probably creating issues. And it created a problem. So with time, it became evil. It was probably not a very conscious evil, if there is a term that we could probably call that. So it's not in
Okay.
that
So
construct.
even if we sort of remove the question of it being a conscious choice or being a more deliberate action or being driven by agency, what we are saying is that the evil referred to in Ramayana probably is not so much about the bunch of Rakshasas doing those pirate style raids on the ashrams, or probably it's also not about the abduction of Sita, but it is probably the evil that we are talking about, and it may be deliberate, it may be non-deliberate, but the evil that we are talking about is essentially the state of shipping technology which remained inaccessible to the mainland India, while the Lankans or the people of Lanka derived economic as well as military benefits from it.
Absolutely. So that's one way to look at it. And in this context, let's look at the construct of the Ramayana. So there are three large
Uh-huh.
parties that in essence the Ramayana talks about. There is Kaushal or Ayodhya,
Mm-hmm.
there is Kishkinda, and
Mm-hmm.
there is Lanka. We've talked earlier about
Mm-hmm.
the technological differences or disparity between Ayodhya and Kishkinda.
Mm-hmm.
And in some sense, that gives us the backdrop to probably understand all of this. So there,
Okay.
in some sense, you could probably even infer that they're setting the stage up for that, for people to infer it.
Mm-hmm.
Today, we find it
Mm-hmm.
hard to understand because, as I said, we are so far ahead on technology. We have advanced so much that all of them seem very similar to us. It is hard for
Mm-hmm.
us to imagine what difference shipping could have made because we
Mm-hmm.
can't understand it. Because we can't appreciate it to that extent, we kind of gloss over it.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Mm-hmm.
So, in essence, this is the construct that the Ramayana is giving us. And then on top of it,
Mm-hmm.
probably the monopolizing of the technology led them to become arrogant. They used to trouble the sages. It made Ravan arrogant enough to abduct Sita. So those are like the what we always know, that finally there will be some incident which will trigger the whole thing.
Mm-hmm. More
So you
like
could
more like second order effects of monopolizing technology, some of which would eventually result in some kind of a major clash.
and which will be triggered by something. So the abduction of Sita
Uh-huh.
triggered it, but maybe that's not the core evil. So on the surface of it,
Mm-hmm.
that's the reason why which the war happened. That's the reason
Mm-hmm.
why Ram and his army built a bridge and crossed over into Lanka.
Mm-hmm.
So that's what it's telling us.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
If we look at a lot of data points, so like we look at war, so Ravan is
Mm-hmm.
probably he's got so much benefit about monopolizing that technology and shipping, and that advantage he has of fleeing, that probably they're not great warriors. They might have a couple of weapons or couple of innovations or weapons which they use, which Meghnad or Indrajit used on Ram and Lakshman, etc. But typically
Mm-hmm.
they're not the battle hardened or the fearsome warriors that people of Kaushal are.
Mm-hmm.
They don't have a need.
More
They are more and maybe they are more shipping warriors and shippers and those kind of people.
more
So
of
which
a
is why
naval force than infantry.
and and more than a force also, why do they need to be a force? They just need to get onto the ship and escape.
Uh-huh.
So their core framework seems to be that. So they're really not a
Mm-hmm.
force. So obviously everybody has some level of weapons because that's a need. Even internally to maintain discipline, you would need that. But they're really not a world class warring machine, which is also shown by how the battle
Mm-hmm.
plays out.
Eventually
Because their
turned out.
advantage came
Uh-huh.
from here. So although they were so wealthy, they were on an isolated island, an island where mainland India really did not have access, which is being clearly shown by the fact that none of these guys really knew about Lanka. None of these guys could
Mm-hmm.
easily cross over into Lanka, and even when they had to do all those efforts and all those things to cross over. It was not easy for them to cross over. So it was completely protected. So why, in such a protected
Mm-hmm.
environment, will you build out such great armies? Does not make sense.
Mm-hmm.
Which also explains the way the battle played out.
Makes sense. Mm-hmm.
Stepping back, let's look at the other things. So maybe what Hanuman did was he swam across the ocean. If we try and now in this context try to look at everything, and it was a
Mm-hmm.
heroic swim. We know people have swum. If it's the Park Straits, people can swim across it. It was a heroic swim. He came back
Mm-hmm.
the same way. So, and if we do a
Mm-hmm.
closer reading of the Valmiki's Ramayana, actually at times you can see passages, or you can find passages which show Hanuman's actions as very akin to swimming strokes and swimming through the sea, the waves hitting him on his
Uh-huh.
chest, he trying to lunge forward in them. So all those forms have been given.
In Valmiki Ramayana, you're
In
literally
Valmiki's
saying
Ramayana.
that Valmiki Ramayana, a lot of description can be taken to mean him swimming in the ocean instead of him flying in the sky.
Yeah, instead of him flying in the sky.
And
So
we
a lot of
also have that that demoness inside whose stomach Hanuman gets in.
so he has to inside and outside the mouth, go through the mouth. Sursa, there is Sursa,
Go
and
through
there is
that
the
mouth.
other
They
one.
are sursas, yes, yes.
So again, maybe some sea monsters or something that
Uh-huh.
he wades on the way.
Mm-hmm.
So that's possibly one construct, which is why when Ram's army reaches the shore, they need to build out a bridge.
Mm-hmm.
Ravan is probably the other very interesting thing is Ravan knows that probably Ram is coming because Hanuman has visited
Uh-huh.
and he has threatened him and he has escaped. But there is nobody really guarding the shores because they don't expect anybody. And
Mm-hmm.
it is like a kind of a free march from Kishkinda till Lanka's fort that Ram's army gets.
Mm-hmm.
And then when
Mm-hmm.
the war starts, probably the war is over before it even started, as we discussed.
Mm-hmm.
So
Mm-hmm.
probably in a nutshell, what Ramayana could be viewed as is this technology, three levels of technology. The technology
Mm-hmm.
of Kishkinda, which is slightly backward, the technology of Kaushal, which is modern, but this new innovation that is coming in, which is now tilting the whole level playing field
Towards Lanka. Mm-hmm.
towards Lanka. And what the Ramayana probably tells us that this is also a form of evil. If somebody has
Mm-hmm.
disproportionate advantages and starts
Mm-hmm.
tilting the level playing field away from everybody, it will lead to
Mm-hmm.
chaos. It will lead to this. Because finally we can
Mm-hmm.
imagine it. That's what we see today also. It's something that is very modern in
Mm-hmm.
our thought also today. Now shipping as
Uh-huh.
the technology leading to this is hard for us to imagine, but we can see these shifts.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And Ram's great achievement was that he released this monopoly. He dismantled this monopoly, got the technology
Mm-hmm.
to be available to everybody, and in that sense that wealth that was going away started getting
Mm-hmm.
redistributed and prosperity returned.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Lokesh, we have a comment on the idea of Lanka and water transport. Uh,
Mhm.
it says that if they had a big army, they would have gone and conquered other nations. That could be one way. The other way to look at it is that probably they didn't need a big army for their own defense.
Sorry, can you say that again? I lost you.
I'm saying, I mean, one way to look at Lanka is that they did not need a huge army for their own defense. Their entire defense strategy was essentially focused on two things. If it is about raids that they make in mainland India or in other places, they have this advantage of quick entry and quick exit. They could just get in and out.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Whereas when it comes to the home territory, the big advantage is the ocean around them. Nobody else can cross it. So
Comment.
that's their entire defense strategy.
Which is what it appears to be.
And yes,
Which is
in fact, this connects very well. And because of their hold over shipping technology, they are maybe they don't really have that much incentive to build armies and go fight and conquer other countries. They are already getting
and we
rich.
need to understand Lanka is a relatively small place. It's probably getting enough wealth, which is why probably they have not gotten into the cycle. So enough prosperity is still coming there.
Uh-huh.
Now, maybe if this had not
And in
happened
fact,
and this continued for a few generations, would they have built out armies and conquered it? Would they have become like the Englands or the Spains or the Portugals, what we see in the medieval ages? I don't know.
No, but even the medieval conquests are essentially driven by economic benefits. The Industrial Revolution, if you have controlled the colonies, you get a lot of economic benefit. Now, if I have another source of economic benefit, significant economic benefits, something which is unassailable, my competitive advantage, why do I really need to go after another source and spend cost there?
Absolutely. And even in that context, so if you just as a point, in the medieval ages, the or say the post-industrial revolution, what we saw, or even the medieval ages, was it was competition between, say, a Spain and a Portugal and a Netherlands and England and France, which led to the development of colonies. It was not, it was
Uh-huh.
to protect their trading interest vis-a-vis their European rivals, rather than
Mm-hmm.
vis-a-vis the natives. That was the initial motivation for all of it, because they wanted to monopolize that trade. In here, in the
Mm-hmm.
case of Lanka, the trade is, they already have a monopoly, nobody
They
else has it,
already monopolize. Uh-huh.
which was different in Europe.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So
So you
in
don't
that
really
context,
need colonization.
and maybe it's too early in the game right now,
Uh-huh.
and we are talking maybe 500, 700,000 BC, so we should not keep that context out. So a lot of other technologies are not
Mm-hmm.
developed, the amount of colonization you want to do may be different,
Mm-hmm.
the level of travel that you have and the safety, maybe they can only travel around the coastal areas, not fare into the big oceans, which is what they're probably doing. My guess is what they're probably doing from the reading is they're probably going very close to the coast and coming in,
Mm-hmm.
so they're not
Mm-hmm.
crossing the ocean.
And in the ocean, they have no challenger because if we assume the technology monopoly hypothesis, we also know
Then they
that
don't
there
have a
are no
technology.
other navies. Yeah, there are no competitor navies that would intercept them, like
So at
the
least the Ramayana
submarine.
does not mention any competitor to Ravan there, so there
So
is
so
no
no
competition
South
there.
China Sea kind of an issue, no Somalian pirates, nothing of that sort.
Nothing of that sort. Nothing of that
Mm-hmm.
sort. That's a clear monopoly, and Ravan is able to control it. So his skill to be able to control it is enough. He's able to control that,
Mm-hmm. Makes
and
sense.
that sets up the context. And he's probably even that
It sets
forward-looking
up the
that he is
context.
an outpost in terms of Khardushan posted near the Nagpur belt or the Chota Nagpur, the Nagpur area, which is Panchvati and all that. He's even as an outpost
Mm-hmm.
there to probably
Mm-hmm.
help in some of these things.
Mm-hmm.
They are shown to be traveling that far into inland India, which is maybe using river transport and coastal areas of seas is what they're using.
Mm-hmm. Makes sense.
So in that context, if you look at the whole story again or the whole narrative, it is that the achievement of Lord Ram is
Mm-hmm.
humongous.
Mm-hmm.
In some sense, there is this large population which is starting to become poor. They just don't know if this wealth is getting eroded, they just don't know what to do. Even if you put in more effort, even if you put in more labor, it will not lead to any outcome. It's something
Mm-hmm.
else. It's something else that just nobody knows what's happening, but slowly wealth is getting eroded and it's getting accumulated in Lanka.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
You're slowly becoming backward, which is why the connotation with Ram Rajya, which is very interesting, is prosperity. It's
Uh-huh.
not peace. The core
It's not.
construct or the core
Uh-huh.
word that you get out of Ram Rajya is probably prosperity. That's also to me what's a
Mm-hmm.
very interesting, I think.
Mm-hmm.
We're not talking about development. We're not talking about peace. We're not talking about
Mm-hmm.
religion. We're talking about prosperity. Now that seems like a strange word there.
Mm-hmm.
People became prosperous.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And how did people become prosperous? Obviously, a technology which had a lot of capability became
And
available to everybody, and
and
trading started.
absolutely. And on top of it, it's called Ram Rajya. So Ram has to be responsible for that prosperity.
Mm-hmm.
And if you look at it from this lens or this interpretation, it is very clear that the reason for this prosperity is this one person, Lord Ram, or is Lord Ram.
Mm-hmm.
It is through his actions, it is through his that prosperity comes back.
Lokesh, a very weird parallel, but can we think of it as some kind of a Swades story where Shah Rukh Khan brings electricity to the village? Obviously, there is no evil guy preventing the electricity technology reaching that village. But in terms of the overall impact on the people, in terms of the struggles, in terms of the situation where a huge population is deprived of a very capable technology. Do you see any parallel there? I mean, the disclaimer that it is a weird comparison.
That seems more like a social angle to it, Swadesh.
Uh-huh.
That here is this technology, people are not getting it here because of ABCD reasons. We all know
Yeah,
it, we all experience it, so we all know what we want. Here in this
so
case, what is very interesting, and which is why
okay, we don't
probably
even know.
Ram is Lord Ram, because this was a problem that nobody even it's not clearly articulated. The essence of the Ramayana in some sense is that this problem is not clearly articulated. But defeating Ravan ushered in prosperity. Now, these are in some sense two very disparate things that seemingly come together. It's not that we have been deprived of a light bulb that shines finally at the end of Swades, that we know exists, that we know we want, that has these benefits. This is about in that extreme unknown space. We don't know what's ailing us.
Uh-huh.
We don't know what's happening, but something is ailing us. And suddenly here is Lord Ram. He comes, he goes into exile. 14 years back when he returns, suddenly, and he becomes king, and we are prosperous. That's the probably the larger construct the story needs to be seen in.
I think that's a very elegant articulation. We are basically asking how does killing of Ravan eventually lead to prosperity in India increase? And maybe there is a link which is not very obvious on the first glance at least, but that probably is the central essence of the story.
And along with that, killing of Ravan and the killing of Ravan immediately leads to coronation of Ram.
Uh-huh.
So Ravan dies, Ram gets coronated, and prosperity gets ushered in. So on the first reading, it is that Lord Ram became the king, so that ushered in prosperity. But there could be a different way to probably look at all of that. That there is probably a different correlation at play here. Because it is at that moment. So immediately after killing Ravan is when Ram becomes king. So it is, so the prosperity is not. So Bharat ruled effectively as Ram's emissary or as Ram's protege for 14 years. We don't have Bharat prosperity because we don't have
That's
that.
interesting.
That event has not happened. Prosperity can't happen. No fault of Bharat's, but that's the issue. So the coronation of Ram, which happens just after Ravan's death, which means just after that monopoly is dismantled, leads to prosperity.
That's interesting. I think I think even the time frame is important. Prosperity does not really take that much time that we would an economy growing at the rate of 8% would typically take to become prosperous. Prosperity almost happens in a very short time on a historical scale, almost instantaneously.
At least you will start seeing those signs. You will start seeing those.
You'll start seeing those signs. I mean,
the
impact.
the mood will improve. The people will become more positive. You will start seeing those changes. So maybe
a
if
lot
you
of
do a
it,
wealth comparison, it will take a while for
it will still
the
take a
incomes
time,
to
but
transform, but the mood, the direction can be clearly
Mhm.
deciphered.
A lot of economic activities, new economic activities would open up. Incomes would have immediate impact. Obviously, wealth would take some time to get
Wealth
accumulated.
will take some time, but the direction, it's like a tectonic shift. It's a complete shift. You're going down.
Hmm.
If you look at the global GDP today, so India going down and suddenly it going on an 8 to 10% curve because something happened.
Hmm.
And if you do that, we know the kind of vibrancy and positivity and energy it unleashes, which is probably what is Ram Rajya.
Makes sense. Makes sense. Makes sense. I think that brings us uh, very interesting perspectives. We talked about that we see more in terms of technology not being made available to a large section of people. If we look at it from the mainland people perspective, what we are saying is that something is ailing the economy, nobody knows what it is, people are clueless, and then something happens and Ram has to go on an exile. He somehow gets dragged into this war. Ravan gets killed, the technology becomes universally successful, and we see that impact happening.
And that
The
also
talk
coincides
of
with
Ram Rajya,
coronation of Ram. And it also
it
coincides with the
also
coronation
coincides
of
with.
Ram. So it becomes like a Ram Rajya. In a nutshell, that could be another way to probably interpret or look at the
the
a core
the
aspect of
the
the Ramayana. There are other
uh-huh.
lot of other moral and a lot of other stories also or narratives built into the Ramayana, but this could be looked at as one of the core narratives of the Ramayana.
Hmm. All right, Lokesh. So that brings us to the close of today's session. What do we talk about tomorrow? I think one thing that we should look at is the question of succession in Ramayana. Do we see that question being raised? How do we see that being tackled? Any other thing that you would want to cover tomorrow?
Let's just think it over by the time we come tomorrow, and maybe we can go back
Perfect.
to the question of monarchy and succession and those roles that led us into a detour into the Mahabharata and the Ramayana. Let's maybe see if we try and if we are able to pick that up, that thread that which had
Mm-hmm.
led us here. Maybe we pick up that thread again, given
Mm-hmm.
these two
Perfect.
discussions that we have had.
Perfect. We have one parting question, and we
Mhm.
don't need to answer that right away. What would have caused the end of Ramraj?
That's probably not what the Ramayana talks about. So it could be
Aha.
anything, or whether it's ended or not ended. That's probably a completely different question. That's not the context of the Ramayana at all.
Aha.
Ramayana, in some
Okay.
sense, ends with the ushering in of Ramraj.
Ushering in of Ramraj. All right, Mukesh. Good discussion. Let's close it for today, and we connect back tomorrow.
And try and improve your connection, sir, so that we have a
I
better
will.
conversation together.
I will definitely do something about it. All right.
Chalo.
Thanks,
Okay.
everyone.
Good night.
Connect tomorrow 9. Bye
Okay.
bye.
Good night.